There is one thing that Conservatives love to brag about, and that is that they are the party of the economy. They are the ones who are going to have their steady hand on the tiller of the economy, steering it in a good direction. And in reality, and certainly after 12 years of Conservative rule, um, they have broken the economy to a point where even they do not know how to actually fix it. And instead, their only plans that they have are to break it even more. So this is an entirely a situation of their own creation, and they've got no one else to blame for it than themselves. They can't blame anyone else. The entire Brexit project has broken the UK economy even more. Their plans to sort of get the benefits of Brexit aren't really good for the economy because they talk about divergence, and of course, the more you diverge, the less our businesses in the UK can trade with our closest trading partner, because we've talked, of course, before many times on this channel how trade gravity is a thing. Countries always trade with their closest neighbors. It's the same with America. America does a lot of trade with Canada and Mexico. Why? Because they're their closest neighbors. It's the same for all the other European countries. The only probably one, an outlier, of course, is China, but that's because, again, the size of sort of China's economy that they've got going on, and their sort of economic growth, or as some economists have said, sort of false growth in and around it. But that's another discussion for another time. But yeah, hopefully, one thing that this is going to do, it is going to finally put to bed the myth that the Conservatives are good at steering the UK economy. So we're going to get into this piece on open democracy because it's a fantastic deep dive piece. But there is also a video out there. I think it was done by Sean. I can't remember if it was or not. It's also very similar to this as well, showing just how bad the Conservatives really were on the economic argument and how bad they are in reality. So before we do that, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel that way. So let's get on with this then, shall we? So this comes from Open Democracy, the title of "The Conservatives Broke the UK Economy and They Don't Know How to Fix It." The campaign to replace Boris Johnson as UK Prime Minister has kicked into full gear this week. First out of the blocks was the former Chancellor Rishi Sunak, who is currently the bookies' favourite to win the race. In a very slick video released on social media, Sunak pledged to restore trust, rebuild the economy, and reunite the country. The choice of words was curious. After all, the party that he seeks to lead has been running the country since 2010 and has been personally responsible for managing the economy for the past 3 years. If the UK economy is broken, then it is Sunak and his party that are responsible, and broken it is. The pride of the Conservative reign since 2010 has coincided with one of the bleakest periods in the UK economic history. Following the global financial crash in 2008, real wages after inflation is taken into account, and it suffered the longest sustained decline on record. Today, the real average earners are lower than they were in 2008, and the Office of Budget Responsibility predicts that it will stay below the pre-financial crash levels until the end of 2026. The Bank of England recently warned that UK households are now facing the biggest fall in living standards since comparable records began, and to experience 2 consecutive lost decades in a row is unprecedented in modern history. This stagnant wage growth has been compounded by the steady erosion of the welfare state. But before the COVID-19 pandemic hit, real incomes for the lowest income households that were no longer in the 2001-2002, thanks to the years of sustained welfare cuts. The result is that poverty has been declining steadily in the preceding decades and then increased sharply, particularly amongst households with children. and the number of emergency food parcels distributed by food banks has soared almost unbelievably 6,000%. 6,000%. That's the sorry state that it shows we're in. Since 2009 and 10, increasing from 40,000 to 2.5 million in 2019 to 2020. The squeeze on the living standards has been exacerbated by an increasing housing crisis, which has actually been fueled by successive Conservative governments. Housing prices across the UK have soared 167% since 2010, and it has far outstripped the wage growth, pushing home ownership ever out of reach for millions of people. Renters in the private sector, meanwhile, have increased by 126%. Perhaps the cruelest aspect of the escalating housing crisis has been the surge in rough sleeping, which has nearly trebled in England during the Conservatives' first 7 years in power. At the same time, the public services have been steadily eroded. The NHS waiting lists have reaching records high, while education budgets have been slashed by 10%. Countless libraries, public parks, sports facilities, museums, youth clubs, children's centres have been shut down. For every £100 that went on public services in 2010, only £86 in real terms was actually spent in 2020. The period of Conservative reign has been particularly gruelling for young people. Following the tripling of English tuition fees in 2012, the average amount of student debt has soared by over 3,000%. And in 2012, the average student in England graduated with over £17,000 of debt. And in day figures, that would mean about £45,000. The recent increases in national insurance mean that graduates paying the basic rate of income face a marginal tax rate of 50%, meaning that half of the pay increases will be deducted in tax and student loan payments. Of course, not everyone has been feeling the pinch, however. Homeowners and landlords have seen their wealth soar thanks to surging house prices and rents. The state of the pensions has been protected thanks to the triple lock, which was introduced in 2010. Meanwhile, the wealth of the UK's 10 richest people has increased by more than 250%, increasing from 70 billion in 2010 to 182 billion this year. This is no accident. Homeowners, pensioners, the wealthy are the Tory party's core voters' constituents. But for almost everyone else, the economic life has become considerably more difficult since the Conservatives came to power. One might argue that the above metrics do not accurately capture what the Conservatives have set out to achieve, and this is true. Successive Conservative governments have prioritised the macroeconomic targets, such as increasing economic growth, raising productivity, reducing public debt, controlling inflation, boosting exports above broad social economic goals. But even using these metrics as a benchmark, the party's record in government is one of repeated failure. Since the 2010, economic growth has lagged behind other major advanced economies. Productivity has stalled. The national debt is more than doubled, increasing by more than £1 trillion. And today, inflation is at 9%, the highest as it's been in 40 years. And the UK's trade performance recently fell due to its worst levels since records began. In other words, the Tory record of the economy has been one of repeated failure, whichever way you look at it. And some might contend that this is partly because the Conservatives' period in government has been marred by a series of unprecedented crises, including the fallout of the global financial crisis, COVID-19 pandemic, the global energy crisis. But in every case, the party has foisted a series of self-inflicted wounds on the country that were entirely avoidable. The austerity model imposed by the Conservative government after the global financial crisis stifled productivity, has held down wages and suffocated growth, leading some of its even most vocal advocates to acknowledge that it was a mistake. The UK's bungled response to the pandemic resulted in one of the world's worst highest death tolls, one of the slowest economic recoveries, and the energy crisis currently engulfing the country has its roots deep in a very misguided energy policy. And virtually all of the UK's economic problems have been made worse by the crisis that is entirely of the Tory party's own making, a hard Brexit rammed through by Parliament at Boris Johnson's behest. Do any of the Tory leadership candidates have a plan for dealing with the UK's economic woes? Based on the campaign to date, the response is an emphatic no. So far, leadership candidates have engaged in a race to the bottom on tax cuts, including presenting serious plans for fixing the UK's broken economy. This blind faith in tax cuts is a road to prosperity that has no empirical basis in reality and will almost certainly make the UK's economic woes worse, not better. In reality, these pledges are a naked attempt to court the 200,000 Tory members who are overwhelmingly old, white, wealthy men living in the south of England. And that is what ultimately will select the next Prime Minister. The lack of a serious policy debate in the campaign is symptomatic of a party that has run out of ideas for fixing the UK economy and has run out of road as a credible party for government. And I sort of agree. We are facing major economic crisis. And I've said it today, even with my review of last night's debate, and it will probably be the same with tonight's debate as well. There is going to be no serious talk about actually how to fix the economy. It's going to be more, a tax cutting arms race, probably more tonight. Sunak will try and say that, oh, he's the perfect guy to lead the economy, that he's the only one who can fix the economy. But as we just said there, he's been in charge of the economy for the past 3 years. If there was anyone who was more responsible for breaking the economy, it was him. So, and that's the funny thing, because one of the Tory, obviously, candidates could bring that up as a potential attack line on Sunak. But of course, that also eventually means they would be attacking their own party, that they've caused all these problems. But they could actually use that as an actual opportunity to provide proper economic ideas and policy. But of course, they haven't. They've run out of road, they've run out of ideas, and they've run out of credibility as a serious government choice. And unfortunately, the only thing that's keeping them in power at the moment is the first past the post system. Without it, they would not be in power. And unfortunately, as we've said many times before, this race is going to end up in November with the cost of living crisis, all these other crises we've got exploding in whoever wins, be it Truss or Sunak. There will then be questions asked of, did we choose the right person? Which will eventually probably lead to a vote of no confidence, maybe in March, February time, possibly. And we could be doing this song and dance all over again in 6 months' time. So... And this is the point where Labour really has to start get serious. It has to get put forward a good economic policy, one that is seriously going to tackle the problems the country is facing. And at the moment, no one in the Tory party has put forward, the Labour Party has put forward a serious case of how to do this yet. Hopefully they will. Like I say, they've still got time, but they really need to take that economic argument really seriously. And just as we've gone through here in this article, there is a long list of stuff to attack the Tories on their economic policies of over 12 years of complete and abject failure. So Keir Starmer can really put forward a dramatic case for change in the UK economy. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. But of course, down below, there is a link to my Patreon page and a notification link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.